Good day, this is Professor Will, CBMD, PhD. Hey, Sunday, July 8th, 2018. It is 13:24 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Math words. AA similarity. Angle-angle similarity. When two triangles have corresponding angles that are congruent, as shown below, the triangles are similar. AAS congruence, SAA congruence. Angle-angle side congruence. When two triangles have corresponding angles and sides that are congruent, as shown below, the triangles are congruent. Abscissa, the first coordinate in an ordered pair. For the point 8, comma, minus 2, the abscissa is 8. Absolute convergence, absolutely convergent, describes a series that converges when all terms are replaced by their absolute values. To see if a series converges absolutely, replace any subtraction in the series with addition. If the new series converges, then the original series converges absolutely. Absolute maximum, absolute max, global maximum, and global max. The highest point over the entire domain of a function or relation. Note the first derivative test and the second derivative test are common methods used to find maximum values of a function. Absolute minimum, absolute min, global minimum, global min. The lowest point over the entire domain of a function or relation. Note the first derivative test or the second derivative test are common methods used to find minimum values of a function. Absolute value makes the negative number positive. Positive numbers and 0 are left unchanged. The absolute value of x is written x in bars. We write negative 6 in bars equals 6 and 8 in bars equals 8. Formally, the absolute value of a number is the difference between the number and the origin. This is a much more powerful definition and makes the negative number positive idea. It connects the notion of absolute value to the absolute value of a complex number and the magnitude of a vector. Absolute value of a complex number, modulus of a complex number, the distance between a complex number and an origin. On the complex plane, the absolute value of a plus bi is written a plus bi in bars. The formula for a plus bi in bars is a cubed and plus b cubed. For a complex number in polar form, r cos degree plus sin I sin, the modulus is r. Acceleration, the rate of change of velocity over time. For motion along the number line, acceleration is a scalar. For motion on a plane or through space, acceleration is a vector. Accuracy, how close an approximation is to an actual value. Accuracy is 3.14 is fairly accurate approximation of pi. Precision 3.999 is a more precise approximation but is less accurate. Acute angle, an angle that has measure less than 90 degrees. Acute triangle, a triangle for which all interior angles are acute. Addition rule, sum for probability, a method for finding the probability that either or both of two events occur. Additive inverse of a matrix, the matrix obtained by changing the sign of every matrix element. The additive inverse of matrix A is written minus A. Note the sum of a matrix and its additive inverse is the zero matrix. Additive inverse of a number, the opposite of a number. For example, the additive inverse of 12 is minus 12. The additive inverse of minus 3 is 3. Formally, the additive inverse of x is minus x. Note the sum of the number and its additive inverse is 0. Additive property of equality, the formal name for the property of equality that allows one to add the same quantity to both sides of an equation. This, along with the multiplicative property of equality, this is one of the most commonly used properties for solving equations. Adjacent, next to neighboring. Adjacent angles, two angles in a plane which share a common vertex and a common side but do not overlap. Angles 1 and 2 below are adjacent angles. Adjugate classical adjoint. The matrix formed by taking the transpose of a cofactor matrix of a given original matrix. The adjugate of matrix A is often written adjugate A. Note, in the past, the term for adjugate used to be adjoint. The name has changed to avoid ambiguity with a different definition of the term adjoint. Sometimes the adjugate is called the classical adjoint to refer to this order term. Consult the book on linear algebra for more information. Affine transformation, a transformation which involves any combination of translations, reflections, stretches, shrinks, or rotations. Note collinearity and concurrency are invariant under the affine transformation. Aleph null. The symbol Aleph with a subscript of 0 refers to the cardinality of the countably infinite set. Note, Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Algebra, the mathematics of working with variables. Algebraic numbers, real numbers that can occur as roots of polynomial equations that have integer coefficients. For example, all rotational numbers are algebraic, so are all surds such as 7 square root, as well as numbers built from surds such as the number below. 42 plus 15 decimal 2, square root, and a cubed over 4 minus 3 square root over square root. Algorithm, a set of instructions used to solve a problem or obtain a desired result. For example, the shampoo algorithm explains how to wash one's hair. Wet, hair, lather, rinse, repeat. Gaussian elimination is an algorithm for solving linear systems of equations. Alternate angles. See alternate exterior angles, alternate interior angles. Alternating series, a series which alternates between positive and negative terms. For example, a whole number 1 minus 1 over 2 plus 1 over 3 minus 1 over 4 plus 1 over 5 minus 1 over 6 plus is alternating. Alternating series remainder, a quantity that measures how accurately the nth partial sum of an alternating series estimates the sum of the series. If an alternating series is not convergent, then the remainder is not a finite number. Altitude height, the shortest distance between the base of a geometric figure and its top, whether that top is an opposite vertex, an apex, or another base. Altitude of a cone, the height of a cone, the distance from the apex of a cone to the base, formally the shortest line segment between the apex of a cone and the possibly extended base. Altitude also refers to the length of this segment. Altitude of a cylinder, height of a cylinder, the distance between the base of a cylinder, formally the shortest line segment between the possibly extended bases. Altitude also refers to the length of this segment. Altitude of a parallelogram, height of a parallelogram, the distance between opposite sides of a parallelogram, formally the shortest line segment between opposite sides. Altitude also refers to the length of this segment. Altitude of a prism, height of a prism, the distance between the bases of a prism, formally the shortest line segment between the possibly extended bases. Altitude also refers to the length of this segment. Altitude of a pyramid, height of a pyramid, the distance from the apex to the base of a pyramid, formally the shortest line segment between the apex of a pyramid and the possibly extended base. Altitude also refers to the length of this segment. Altitude of a trapezoid, height of a trapezoid, the distance between the two bases of a trapezoid, formally the shortest line segment between the bases. Altitude also refers to the length of this segment. Altitude of a triangle, height of a triangle, the distance between a vertex of a triangle and opposite side, or formally the shortest line segment between a vertex of a triangle and possibly the extended opposite side. Altitude also refers to the length of this segment. Amplitude, half the difference between the minimum and maximum values of the range. Only periodic functions with a bounded range have an amplitude. Essentially, amplitude is the radius of the range. Analytic geometry, coordinate geometry, the study of geometric figures using the coordinate plane or coordinates in space. Formulas from analytic geometry include distance formulas, midpoint formula, point of division formula, centroid formula, area of a convex polygon. Analytic methods, the use of algebraic and or numeric methods as the main technique for solving a math problem. The instructions to solve using analytic methods and solve analytically usually mean that no calculator is allowed. Angle, two rays sharing a common endpoint. Angles are typically measured in degrees or radian. Angle bisector, a line or ray that divides an angle in half. For polygons, an angle bisector is a line that bisects an interior angle. Note the angle bisector of a triangle are concurrent and intersect at the center. Angle of depression, the angle below horizontal, that is, an observer must look to see an object that is lower than the observer. Note the angle of depression is congruent to the angle of elevation. This assumes the object is close enough to the observer so that the horizontals for the observer and the object are effectively parallel. This would not be the case for an astronaut in orbit around the Earth observing an object on the ground. Angle of elevation, the angle above horizontal that an observer must look to see an object that is higher than the observer. Note the angle of elevation is congruent to the angle of depression. This assumes the object is close enough to the observer so that the horizontals for the observer and the object are effectively parallel. This would not be the case for a ground tracking station observing a satellite in orbit around the Earth. Angle of inclination of a line, the angle between a line and the x-axis. The angle is always between 0 degrees and 180 degrees. It is measured counterclockwise from the part of the x-axis to the right of the line. Annulus washer, the region between two concentric circles which have different radii. Antiderivative of a function that has a given function as its derivative. For example, f of x equals x cubed minus 8 is an antiderivative of f of x equals 3x squared. Antipodal points, 2 points directly opposite each other on the sphere. That is, 2 points on opposite ends of a sphere's diameter. Note, for a sphere, antipodal means the same thing as diametrically opposed. Apex, the vertex of the tip of a cone or a pyramid. Epithermal, the line segment from the center of the regular polygons to the midpoint of the side, where the length of this segment, same as in radius, that is, the radius of a regular polygon in inscribed circle. Note, apothem is pronounced with the emphasis on the first syllable, with the A pronounced as in apple, apothem. Approximation by differentials, a method for approximating the value of a function near a known value. The method uses a tangent line and the known value of the function to approximate the function's graph. In this method, delta x and delta y represent the changes in x and y for the function, and dx and dy represent the changes in x and y for the tangent line. Average rate of change, arc, the change in the value of a quantity divided by the elapsed time for a function. This is the change in the y value divided by the change in the x value for the two distinct points on the graph. Arc length of a curve, the length of a curve or line. The length of an arc can be found by one of the formulas below for any differential curve defined by rectangular, polar, or parametric equations. Arc of a circle, a connected section of the circumference of a circle. Area under a curve. The area between the graph of y equals f of x and the x-axis is given by the definite integral below. The formula gives a positive result for a graph above the x-axis and a negative result for a graph below the x-axis. Complex plane, Argand plane, the coordinate plane used to graph complex numbers. The x-axis is called the real axis and the y-axis is called the imaginary axis. The complex number x plus yi is graphed as the point xy. Argument of a complex number, polar angle of a complex number, the angle describing direction of a complex number on the complex plane. The argument is measured in radians as an angle in standard position for a complex number in polar form, r cos degree plus I sin degree. The argument is degree. Argument of a function, the variable term expression on which function operates. For example, the argument of x square root is x. The argument of sin, 2a in bracket, is 2a, and the argument of e to the power of x minus 5 is x minus 5. The argument of f of x is x. Argument of a vector, the angle describing the direction of a vector. The argument is measured as an angle in standard position. Arithmetic, calculations involving numbers. This typically involves the basic operations of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and exponents. Some people also consider roots, logarithms, calculations, modulo, and other more sophisticated operations to be arithmetic as well. Arithmetic mean, the most commonly used type of average. To find the arithmetic mean of a set of n numbers, add the numbers in the set and divide the sum by n. Arm of an angle, side of an angle, either of the two rays making up an angle. Leg of a right triangle, arm of a right triangle, either of the sides in the right triangle opposite an acute angle. The legs are the two shorter sides of the triangle. ASA, congruence, angle, side angle congruence, when two angles have corresponding angles and sides that are congruent, as shown below. The triangles themselves are congruent. Average value of a function, the average height of a graph of a function for y equals f of x over the domain in square brackets a comma b. Asymptote, a line or a curve that the graph of a relation approaches more and more closely the further the graph is followed. Augmented matrix, a matrix form of a linear system of equations obtained from the coefficient matrix as shown below. It is created by adding an additional column for the constants on the right of the equal signs. The new column is set apart by a vertical line. Average, this almost always refers to the arithmetic mean. In general, however, the average could be any single number that represents the center of a set of values. Axis, plural of axis. Axiom, a statement accepted as true without proof. An axiom should be so simple and direct that it is unquestionably true. Axis of a cylinder, the line formed by the centers of the bases of a cylinder. Axis of reflection, the mirror line of a reflection, that is the line across which a reflection takes place. Axis of rotation, a line about which a plane figure is rotated in three-dimensional space to create a solid or surface. Axis of symmetry, a line of symmetry for a graph. The two sides of a graph on either side of the axis of symmetry look like mirror images of each other. Axis of symmetry of a parabola, the line passing through the focus of a vertex of a parabola. The axis of symmetry is perpendicular to the directrix. Back substitution, a process of solving a linear system of equations that has been transformed into row echelon form or reduced row echelon form. The last equation is solved first, then the next to last, etc. So plane geometry or solid geometry, the bottom of a figure if the top is parallel to the bottom, as in a trapezoid or prism. Both the top and bottom are called bases. Base an exponential expression a in the expression a to the power of x. For example, 2 is the base of 2 to the power of 3, similar to the base of a logarithm. Base of an isosceles triangle, the side that is not a leg, that is the non-congruent side of a triangle. Base of a trapezoid, either of the two parallel sides of a trapezoid. Base of a triangle, the side of a triangle which is perpendicular to the altitude. Bearing, two similar ways of indicating direction. On the left below is a kind of bearing which uses compass points. The bearing S 34 degrees east means the direction is 34 degrees away from due south, directed towards the east. The other way, on the right below, measures the angle clockwise from due north. Bernoulli trials, an experiment in which a single action such as flipping a coin is repeated identically over and over. The possible results of an action are classified as success or failure. The Bernoulli probability formula is used to find probabilities for Bernoulli trials between point B and between point A and C, if it is on the line segment connecting A and C. IFF, if and only if, bioconditional, a way of writing two conditionals at once, both a conditional and its converse. For example, the statement A triangle is equilateral. IFF, its angles all measure 60 degrees, means both if a triangle is equilateral and its angles all measure 60 degrees, and if all the angles of a triangle measure 60 degrees, then the triangle is equilateral. Binomial, a polynomial with two terms which are not like terms. The following are all binomials: 2x minus 3, 3x to the power 5 plus 8, x to the power 4, and 2ab minus 6a to the power of 2b to the power of 5 decimal. And bisect, cut into two congruent halves. Bisector, a line, segment, line, or plane that divides a geometric figure into two congruent halves. Boundary value problem, BVP, a differential equation or a partial differential equation accompanied by conditions for the value of a function, but with no conditions for the value of any derivatives. Bounded function, a function with a range that is a bounded set. The range must have both an upper bound and a lower bound. Bounded sequence, a sequence with terms that have an upper bound and a lower bound. For example, a harmonic sequence, 1, 1 over 2, 1 over 3, 1 over 4, ellipse is bounded since no term is greater than 1 or less than 0. Bounded set of geometric points, a figure or a set of points in a plane or in space that can be enclosed in a finite rectangle or box. Bounded set of numbers, a set of numbers with both an upper bound and a lower bound. For example, the interval 3, 7 is bounded, so it is a set in curly braces 1, 1 over 7, 1 over 3, 1 over 4, ellipse, end of curly brace. Bounds of integration, limits of integration. For the definite integral b arc over a f of x dx, the bounds or limits of integration are a and b. Rectangular parallel pipe box cuboid, a box shape in three-dimensional space, formerly a polyhedron, for which all faces are rectangles. Box-and-Whisker Plot, a visual display of a 5-number summary. The Box-and-Whisker Plot is a simplified box plot taught to beginners. It does not show outliers, the whiskers extending all the way to the minimum maximum values regardless of how far out they may be. Box plot, modified box plot, a data display that shows the 5-number summary. The whiskers stretching outward from the first quartile and the third quartile, as shown below, are no longer than 1.5 times the interquartile range, IQR. Outliers beyond that are marked separately. Braces, set braces, the symbols and in braces are used to indicate sets. Prochristochrome, a cycloid hanging downwards. Note, prochristochrome is a term from Greek meaning shortest time. The special property of a prochristochrome is the fact that the bead sliding down the prochristochrome-shaped frictionless wire will take a shorter time to reach the bottom than with a wire curved into any other shape. In addition, since a prochristochrome is also a tautochrome, the bead will take the same amount of time to reach the bottom no matter how high or low the release point. And brackets, the symbols and in brackets.